And I love what I do. I love teaching and I love my kids. I love my kids.
Yeah, I want to take one of your dance classes. You won't let me, but I'm going to take one. I'm going to sign up for one and surprise you one day.
Oh,
Jump in there on your Zoom call, on your Zoom lesson. I think we are rolling.
great.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. You look gorgeous. What did you do to your hair? Did you roller set it or what did you do?
Girl, no. When I see you, I'll show you how to put it up in that ponytail.
Okay.
It's just a one knot right there. Boom.
Well, it looks gorgeous. You look stunning, as always. As always.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so what is this shirt you have on? I think I recognize that.
Yeah. Oh, this shirt. This was Teddy's favorite t-shirt. Can you believe he was this little?
I can't. Yeah.
But he was a Steelers fan back in the day, and this was his favorite T-shirt. So I was like, I'm not getting rid of this. So I just blended. It was got too small. He's like, here, you can have it. I had a lot of his small clothes after the accident. He just kind of gained more weight, so I'd get his hand-me-downs, and I'd always wear them. I still have a lot of his clothes.
Well, you look adorable. I am so happy to have you with me today on the show. I am so grateful that you're helping me launch this podcast, and I wouldn't have wanted to do it any other way. So, uh, if people haven't figured this out by now, we are talking to the one and only lovely, beautiful, gorgeous, super talented Karen Still Pendergrass. Yay!
Philadelphia.
That's right. That's right. From Philly. The last time we talked for 2.5 hours. I'm not going to do that to you this time. So
Chatting, catching up. That was fun.
that was fun. That was very fun. So most people know you a lot of people know you as the late, great Teddy Pendergrass's wife, first wife, the original wife. But I wanted you to come on the show and talk with us about things that people may not know about you. You before Teddy, you had a whole career before you even met Teddy. And so I want people to get to know Karen Pendergrass, and I hope that's what we accomplish today, if that's okay with you.
It's fine. Yes.
Good. I think
Good.
I think it's way overdue. So, Karen Pendergrass was born in Philly as Karen Still,
Yes.
and you are from mixed parents.
Yes. My mother is Black. My father is Asian and American Indian. And I'm sure there's some Black in the on the Indian side, but his mother really looks Indian. She's American Indian.
Hmm.
She looks very much American Indian, and his father was Chinese, but my dad never knew his father. It was one of those strained relationships. So he was born, and she kept him, and he was the oldest of. He must have, oh my goodness, uh, seven sisters and brothers. Later, half sisters and brothers, but he was more or less an only child. Great, great, the best man you could ever know. I mean, there's he just took care of us. There are five girls and five of us, and my father worked two, three jobs until he ended up with supermarkets, and he still worked hard. So he was a great, great man. My sisters, I have one sister. She looks Italian, half Italian. Another one looks like she's half Puerto Rican. My older sister, you can see the Asian in her, and we're all different. I've got one sister had hair down to her hips, I mean, her braids were so long, you'd have to, my mother, she'd go to the toilet. My mother was like, get her hair. Because she'd sit on the toilet and her braids would be in the toilet. But, we all look different, but when we're together, we look the same. I mean, you can see that we're sisters.
I did not know that you had that many sisters. I don't think I've ever met your sisters.
No, you haven't. I have four sisters. My oldest sister, Tony, she lives in Brigantine, New Jersey. She's married to a doctor. Then I have one sister that's right under me. I'm 14, 15 months older than her. And she lives not far from me. Her and her husband are both retired now. She does, a lot of work she does accounting. She's a numbers person. Then I've got another sister, Tracy. She just moved back here from California, and she's a vegan, health food. She kind of keeps you on that healthy end. And she's married. Her husband is still in LA, soon to come home. They're just trying to get rid of all whatever they had out there. So he's done that. We told her, well, you come home while he does that. And then I have a baby sister. She's a lawyer. She lives in Linwood, New Jersey, and she's very successful. Very successful. So yeah, and they're all good people. I mean, my sisters are, we have our differences, and growing up, we did our little fighting with each other, but we always said we'd stick together. And to this day, my sisters, are locked in, take care of each other all the time.
Well, if they're anything like you, then I know they're fabulous. So,
Oh.
so there's that. Okay, so you then decided you wanted to pursue dance. So let's jump into that. At what point, how old were you? How did that come about? How did your parents take that? Were they supportive of you pursuing dance? What was that conversation like?
That conversation, well, it's interesting because I, when I was a child, we'd have you have family parties and all the aunts are around, they're cooking, and the first thing they do, they want all the kids to dance. So my sisters would dance for it, and my cousins, I would not dance. I'd go up and sit on the steps and watch because I was like, no, because I was really shy as a child. And I mean, they give them money. They're like, you don't want to dance? I'm like, no, I'm not dancing. No, no. And I wouldn't dance. But when I got into college, I didn't want to take another gym class. I was so sick of gym. But you had to have, credits. So you had to have phys ed credits. So I signed up for a dance class. And it was with a teacher, Helmut Gottschalk was his name. And it was a modern dance class. And he always he would tell me every day, you should dance. You should dance. And I'm like 19 years old. I'm thinking, I should dance, you know. But long story short, I stayed in class and I took some ballet classes, and these were all at Temple University. And I worked for a lawyer at the time. His name was Hardy Williams. And he was always pushing me to go to the next level. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? And he wanted, just wanted me to be successful. I was a gopher in the office, college, go file for City Hall, go get lunch. He gave me some big title, go to the cleaners, I did all the errands for the office. But he would always sit me down and ask me. So I told him I'm going to school to be an elementary school teacher because I always loved children. And he said, well, what do you like to do? And I said, Hardy, I really like dancing. He said, then you should dance. And I'm thinking, I've only had a couple years of dance in college. He said, that's what you should do. He said, I'm the lawyer for Philadelphia. I want you to go check them out. I knew nothing about Philadelphia, had never heard of Philadelphia. I had probably been to one dancing school besides Temple. That was in Germantown. That was after that was during my college terms because I went to take a ballet class. But so it took me a year. I kept calling Philadelphia, and they said, "Oh, we're going to send you the information." I called. They never sent it, and they were probably about 3 years old then. So one day we're in the office. Hardy said, "Have you contacted Philadelphia?" I said, "Well, I've been calling, but nobody, I haven't got the information." He said, "Call him now while I'm sitting here." So I called, and it just so happened the director answered the phone, and I told her, my situation. And she said to me, "Oh, child, just come on up here." So it was, I'm like, wow. So the next day I went to take a jazz class with the company. And she said, okay. She said, come back tomorrow, take a ballet class with them. So I went back the next day, took a ballet class with her company. And she took me in the company. And from there, I just ate, slept, and thought dance. That's all I did was dance, dance, dance. My parents were not in the beginning. They were like, "But when are you going to get a real job?" You know, I mean, this is a real job. We weren't really getting paid. I remember the first year we did get paid. We were so excited. She was able to hire two lead, uh, four leads, two females and two males, and I was the one of the females that she chose to hire. So from then on, I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm being paid to dance. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And it was a good thing because, well, the training we got, she made us learn how to teach as well as learn how to dance. She said, if you learn your craft, you'll always have a job. And gratefully, I have been teaching as long as I've been dancing. And I started, I was got in the company when I was about 20, and I'm 67 now, and I'm still teaching dance. In fact, yesterday, we're in that COVID right now, and the kids have to be spaced out. They have to wear masks, and my poor little kids, they're like, "Can we get a break mask?" I'm like, "Yes." So we have to pull our masks down, take a break, then like pull them back up, and half of them their faces are so little, the masks don't fit. So you got to make sure their noses are covered. You have to sanitize everything when they leave, sanitize when they come in, but they're showing up, so I'm grateful, and they're great kids. And we do some Zoom. I do some Zoom classes, which I would not recommend. I have the dogs coming in the camera. Here comes the little baby. Then you hear the mother in the background. She said your left leg, not your right. Like, it's hilarious, but it's a blessing, and I love what I do. I really love. I love teaching, and I love my kids. I love my kids.
Yeah, I want to take one of your dance classes. You won't let me, but I'm going to take one. I'm going to sign up for one and surprise you one day.
Oh,
Jump in there on your Zoom call, on your Zoom lesson.
and
But
we're
let's
on the floor. We're doing kicks. We're doing splits. And I'm like, oh, that is not right. And then, trying to correct kids on Zoom. And that's the one thing that I really miss is being able to correct them, because we were taught to teach correctly because Philadelphia, Joan Myers Brown started Philadelphia to give children of color a chance to dance. And she knew that children of color, when they weren't being really taught correctly in the white schools, they kind of overlooked, like they let things go by that you normally would do, rolling in on your arches, bending knees, So she made us teach correct. She said, the one thing you're going to do, I mean, and she'd walk in class, and if she wasn't pleased with what you're doing, she'd embarrass you in front of your whole student, in front of your class. So you better get up and do it right. Yeah, but it's challenging. But I said the more we do it, the hopefully the better it will get.
Now, for people who don't know what Philadelphia is, it is the Philadelphia Dance Company that started what back in the 70s and it's still going. Something like
Yes,
that?
70s, yes. She,
Yeah.
yeah, she
And
started. She had a school, and she herself wasn't able to dance. She was really a ballerina, but she wasn't able to get into any of the companies or the schools because they didn't want black children. They didn't want blacks. So she started her own school, and then she started her company out of her school because she saw the talent that was in her school. And she has now, and she's got dancers all over the world. I mean, literally all over the world. A lot of them have their own schools, own companies. Some of them come back. Some of us have, stayed and become teachers in the school. Some of them are running right now. Some of them are getting ready to take over the helm that of Philadelphia, because she's 88 now.
Wow.
She looks like 50. So
Now, were you doing contemporary ballet? What type of dance were you doing then? I know what you're doing now with the kids, but where did you start? Was it more contemporary? Was it more ballet? Was it modern? What's your
it,
thing?
we had to do it all. We had ballet Monday. We had Dunham, ballet, jazz, Horton, and Graham, and we had to learn it all. At one point, we even had to take tap classes, but I can tell you, most of my taps were in the air, so I knew I wanted to be a tap dancer.
So you are a trained dancer, and uh, you decided to pursue it professionally, and that led you to meeting Mr. Teddy Pendergrass. How did that come about?
Okay, what happened? This is we were like a young company, so we would do every performance. We did all the recreation shows, we did all the young audiences, and in the summer, there was a club before the casinos. It was called Club Harlem, and our director she used to run she used to dance there years ago, and then I know she was a lead dancer there with the Larry Steele Company. But what she would do, she would get maybe 1 or 2 weeks out of the summer and take us, not the whole company. She'd just take like four of us or six of us, and we go dance at Club Harlem for a week. So her main reason was, now you all can get paid. We'd get her. It wasn't $35 for a performance. We'd get like a real weekly paycheck, and we do a recreation show in the morning, change clothes, get your bags. She'd get us a limo and take us to Atlantic City that night. We'd open. There was a comedian, then dancers, and then whoever was the main act would come on, and we would do that maybe like 2 weeks. It probably went on for about 2, 3 summers, but we would do that. And one summer, Teddy and his manager came to the show, and that the next day we got home, we didn't really know who he was, but we found out because the next day we were in rehearsal, and his manager called and said, Teddy Pendergrass saw these four girls at the club. He wants to know if they would dance with him. And we're like, well, who is he? They say, well, he's a singer. We're like, what does he sing? They were going through all these. Well, they said, well, he's opening at Carnegie Hall. We said, Carnegie Hall? We'll take it. We'll take it. So we, took the job and went down, met his manager. At that time, her name was Taz.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to rehearsal, blah, blah, rehearsed the show. He had a choreographer, which the choreographer was okay, but we had to give Bruce a little bit of help. Really nice guy. But we did the rehearsals. It was interesting because we probably rehearsed for about 2, 3 months. I don't remember the exact time because it's so long ago. And we had to take this show on the road for our rehearsal. We went to Buffalo. We were scheduled to do Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh. So that night we left the company, Philadelphia, had performed at Cheney, and our bus got back to the studio from Cheney. We got off Philadelphia's bus. Teddy's bus was sitting there at the studio waiting for us. We got off one bus and then got on his bus and went to Buffalo for the performance, and for the show rather. And we did the Buffalo show. They canceled the Rochester because that weekend was the death of his manager. And in fact, it was while we were on the road to Buffalo, when we got to Buffalo that morning, we got the news that she had been killed. And so we did that first show. Then they canceled the second one in honor of her. And then we went to Pittsburgh, did Pittsburgh, came home. The next weekend we were at Carnegie Hall, and that's how it all began.
So, since you brought up Taz, before we get back into the rest of the Teddy portion of the story, you mentioned Taz was his manager. She was murdered, essentially. I think that's what it was called, as an actual murder, right? But the murder still remains a mystery to this
Yes.
day. There have been lots of allegations, lots of finger pointing, and that included suspecting the Philly Black Mafia back then. Do you have, and this is something you and I have talked about before, but what are your thoughts, in hindsight, what are your thoughts on the situation? Who do you think was really behind Taz's murder?
I had to be honest. I have no idea. I know what people have said, and I know what all the rumors, and I didn't know Taz that well. We met Taz probably at the most maybe 3 times while we were working with Ted. And nice woman. She was gorgeous. I mean, she was drop dead gorgeous. But I don't think she was the smartest person when it came to his career. And I think that's where all the speculation comes from, because Teddy, people realized that he was a great talent. And even when he hired us, we were only hired because he didn't want to be on the stage alone, because he was coming from a group to a solo act, and he didn't want to be on that stage that whole time. So he felt like if he filled in, because we did the opening, then we did 3 numbers, and we did the closing with him. And so that's why we were hired, to help fill in that stage. But he was a great talent. He was awesome. And I don't want to say anything, because the FBI questioned us. They questioned us on the road. They came to our homes afterwards separately. And the only thing that I know is that the Black Mafia had something to do with it. And I don't even know much about the Black Mafia. So, I have to leave it with that. That's where it was.
Yeah, okay. We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. Let's go back to you meeting Teddy.
When we danced with him, well, that first show after Carnegie Hall, the dancers, and we were all sitting at breakfast, and Ted came down and said, listen, he said, I really like the show. I want you all to go. We weren't hired to go on the road at that time. We were only hired to do Carnegie Hall. But after that Carnegie Hall show, he decided he wanted us to go on tour. And he asked us the next morning, will you all go on the road with me? And at the time, I was a principal dancer with Philadelphia, and I knew I could not just up and leave. Like, yeah, we'll go, tomorrow. So I asked him, I said, can you give us like a month? Because I was probably teaching 12 to 15 classes in the school. I had a lot of major roles in the company, and the company was just about on the brink to go up another level. And I thought, well, I loved, dancing with him. It was so much fun. It was different from concert dancing. So I asked him, can you give us a month? I said, and, let us get ourselves together. So he said, sure. So all the other 3 girls, they were ready to go. They're like, oh, let's go. I said, well, I can't right now. So he said, no, I'll give you a month. So we took that month, and I was able to teach other dancers my parts in the whatever numbers I was in. And it was maybe 3 weeks. And Henry called. Henry was his road manager. Henry called me. He said, listen, he said, the Bear is coming to Philly. And at that time, I forget the name. It's now the Miriam. I forget the old name. My age got me that time. But he said, he wants his show to be intact for Philly. Can you all perform? I said, well, let me check with our director. So I went to Joan at that time, and we call her Aunt Joan, JB, Mom. She's got like 50 names. And I said, listen, Henry called me, and Teddy wants us to perform with him. And she looked at me, she said, fuck you and Teddy Pendergrass. Yes. And I went home and I was telling my sisters, I remember sitting in the room, and my sisters, I said, listen, I have to make a decision. So my sister said, well, Karen, whatever you decide. They said, do what you want and whatever you decide. And, my little sister, she's probably 13. She said, we got you. We're with you. You do whatever you decide. So I called Henry. I said, Henry, we'll dance. So we did the show with Ted in Philly. And Henry came to the dressing room that night, and he said, listen, the bear wants you all on the road. And he wants to know if you all can give him a decision. And all the girls are looking at me like, well, Karen, what are we going to do? And I'm sitting there like, okay, trying to figure it. So I said, I remember swinging my chair around because we were in the dressing room. And I said, we'll go. And everybody's jumping up, screaming, hollering, yeah. I said, wait. I said, we have to go tell Aunt Joan. And, it's 10, 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And I knew she got up early because I was close with her. I used to babysit her kids, and, I was always around. So I said, we have to go see her first thing in the morning. And I said, meet me at her house at 8 o'clock. And they're like, okay. Do you know I got there at 8 o'clock, not one of those girls showed up? I did it all by myself. She cussed me out, laid me out, and, told me she didn't raise me to be no rock and roll dancer. And, but I said, can't you just give us a leave of absence for a year? She was like, she didn't want to hear it. So we left, went on the road, and we did a year's tour. And that's when Shep took over it. And Shep saw Teddy's talent, and we got fired. I remember we got these letters, and because they were putting together the new show. And Shep said, you don't need dancers. He said, He said, Shep didn't like the show at all. Shep will tell you it sucked. Well, we were having fun. But we got fired, and that's when Teddy said, okay. He's like, well, now you don't work for me, will you go out with me? But he had, flirted a little while we were on the road anyway. And all the girls are like, oh, we knew he was going to pick you. We knew. And I'm like, yeah, right. But we started dating after that. And he would call me and say, come up. He wanted me to, come to the show. I'm going to send for you. And I was like, Teddy, don't send for me. I'm not coming on the road. Because I'd already seen the show. I'd seen the backstage, and I'd seen all the conflama that goes on with stars, and I was like, I'll see when you get home.
So what was it like, speaking of all of that, what was it like dating Teddy?
There were great times. We had lots of fun. I remember, just hanging out at the house, wrestling. I used to always try to beat him. I just knew I could beat him wrestling because I am, which I didn't realize, but strength-wise, I'm really strong. People always tell me, I'll be moving my kids around. They're like, "Ow, Miss Karen." I'm like, "So sorry," I didn't realize my own strength. But we used to have lots of fun. We weren't hanging out a lot. Most of the time when we went out, we were either at the house, or there was a group that we hung with. It was Turquoise, Irving, and her husband, Julius, and another couple, Malcolm and Jackie Pryor, and Brinkley and Pansy. They were kind of like his group that he hung around with. So we'd go to dinners or go to one of their houses for dinner. But, I was always working, because once we left Ted, I went back to dancing I went back to Philadelphia. And so, my nights were in the studio. We weren't in clubs. I didn't know like the top song of the year, or I didn't know, anything, because we had to dance. We had to dance till 11 to 12 o'clock at night because we were trying to get Philadelphia on the map. But we had fun times. We did many things. I've had many great times, Grammys, White House dinners, White House luncheons, many great opportunities. And of course, there were other girls, but I didn't worry myself with that. I guess, I was young and it was never in my face, so to say. I remember one time somebody did call me and they're like, "Oh, your boyfriend's over here with another girl. You need to get dressed and get over here to the club." I'm like, "Girl, I have to work in the morning." Goodbye. Hung up the phone and went to sleep and went to work the next day.
So wait a minute, you were never in recording sessions with Teddy? You never hung out in the studio, or you were never around during those fun
No,
recording sessions?
but I never went to the studio. I remember a couple of times the kids would, we get the kids every summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he's like, "Come on, I'm going to work." And I'm like, "No, you go to work. I'm staying here with the kids." I was never in the studio. And I felt like that was his work. If he was a doctor and had to do surgery, I wouldn't be running to the operation to the, hospital. So this was his work. And he would go to the studio. And many times after he'd come home, he'd play those tapes over and over and over. And he, just work out different things. If he said then or that, or did he say that, and he taught me how to listen to music because he'd say, "Close your eyes and listen to this." And it was so amazing because I closed my eyes and I could hear the drums, or I could hear the piano, or I could hear his diction. And that's what he would do. He'd, study those tapes and go back the next day and fix them. But yeah, I didn't go to the studio. That wasn't an interest for me. And even when he'd ask me to come on the road, it was like, no, I didn't go to his shows. I think I went to one show at Valley Forge. He came to Philly, and I went to one show, and a friend of mine, my roommate, had talked me into going. And I really didn't want to go, but I'm like, "Okay, let's go." And I remember after the show, he had Henry come get me. It was even before the show. And he was like, wanted to know why I didn't let him know I was coming. And I'm like, I didn't know I had to let you know I was coming. But anyway, that was the only show I ever went to and saw from the audience perspective. But yeah, I didn't. And the ads they did, I have every ad, every magazine interview he's done is sitting over there in the box. I told little Teddy, "I'm bringing them to your house because, this is all your dad's history. Somebody needs to have it and keep it." So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So so Teddy ended up having three kids, two girls and a boy. But the two of you decided not to have kids together. These are his children by other people.
When I met Donna and Tish, they were like 4 and 5, and Teddy was probably. I met Tish and Donna when we were on the road. They were 4 and 5, yeah, and Teddy was the same. But they were, like my little friends. And they were always around. And they were, what can you say? They were my kids. They became my kids. Teddy and I, at one point after the accident, we did want to have kids, but we ended up changing our mind. Well, he changed his mind because I wanted 5 kids. I wanted twins. I wanted a big family. But yeah, they're still my kids. They were always my kids. Very good friends with their mothers, still their mothers. We call each other sisters. I know Brenda, I know Rose, and we're in contact all the time.
So let's fast forward to you and Teddy decide to get married. How did Teddy propose? I mean, this is the romantic guy. I mean, he was the man. So I can't even imagine what was the proposal like?
Well, before the proposal, we did move in together. We lived together. And I remember we were sitting in the rehab. We were sitting at Moss Rehab. No, McGee, I'm sorry. And my dad, at that time, my dad was getting ready to purchase a 3 apartment home. And my sisters and I were going to move in there and rent to purchase. And each of one of us would have our own apartment. And, Teddy and I are talking about it. He said, well, no. He said, you need to make your address 57 Crosby Brown Road. So I'm sitting there like, really? Are you serious? So we talked about it, and we just made the decision that when he came home, I would move in with him. So we lived together. Let me see, that was Crosby Brown Road. That we were there for about 2, 3 years, 81, 82, 83. Then we moved, we built a home that was conducive to the wheelchair, because at Crosby Brown, we had put an elevator in that gave him access to upstairs and downstairs so he wouldn't be stuck in one room. And we had, remodeled the bathroom so it was wheelchair accessible. But it was still a lot to handle. The expense of running that house was enormous. But we were blessed because we got the house on the market. The first couple that looked at it bought it. We showed that house one time, the Millers, and I remember his wife saying, Mrs. Miller, she said, this is the house I wanted. And that was it. We sold the house. And then we moved to Mom's house because our house was being built. So we lived with Mom for about maybe 5, 6 months, which was a real trial because there were no ramps, no nothing. And our bedroom was her dining room, and somebody built us a ramp to get in the house, which was it was very steep. So it was hard getting in and out of the house, but we made it work. Then we moved to Flat Rock, which was the house that he ended up being his last home. And the way he proposed to me, he sent me every day for 12 days. The first day, I got these dozen roses, and he had all these. In fact, I still have the cards, but he wrote these truly romantic sayings. I don't know where he got them from. You can tell they're quotes. And so I got 12 roses, then I got 11, next day I got 11, then 10, down to the last one, I got a single rose, and up under the rose was a diamond ring. And that's when he proposed. We were in the living room, and the kids were there. I had some nieces and nephews. They were there, and I got the rose, and I was so excited, because it was just such a nice buildup. Then all of a sudden I see this bright light shine at me, and I remember screaming and just running. I just ran and slid like, ah! But that was it, and I said yes. So we ended up engaged.
So you were with Teddy from the beginning, through it all. For people who aren't familiar, I think everyone at this point knows, but Teddy ended up having a terrible, horrific accident that caused him to be paralyzed from the chest down. What was that moment like when you got that call? Did the police call you? Did Ida Pendergrass call you? Did family, the hospital? Like, what was that moment like when you first found out about Teddy's accident?
It was funny because that morning, my phone rang like 6 o'clock. And I'm like, who is calling me 6 o'clock in the morning? It was my mother. She said, are you home? And I'm like, yes, I'm asleep. And I was trying, my mother, you didn't sleep late in my house. So I was almost leery to tell her I was still asleep. Because when your mother called you, you're like, oh no, I'm up. No, but then she hung up. Then my Aunt Joan from Philadelphia, she called me. I'm like, why are these people? And the only thing they said, are you home? And I'm like, yeah. So I hung up the phone, and I said, something is up. So I called. My immediate reaction was to call Teddy. I called him. The line was busy. So I figured, well, he always took the phone off the hook at night. That was before he had call waiting and all that. So he would take the phone off the hook. And so I'm thinking, okay, it's busy. Then I called his mother, and her phone just rang. And I said, oh no, she's up. And I know she's up at 6. She's like early riser. She's in prayer or something, but I knew she was up. So then I turned on the radio, and that's what I heard it on the radio. And uh, I remember I was getting a shower, getting dressed, and I think it was Henry called me and said, you know, they were at Jefferson Hospital. I said, okay. I said, I'm on my way. And I went over, and it was already a major crowd of people. And we sat for a while. I was in the room with his mom, and then Shep and Danny got there, and they took me, Shep, Danny, and there was another girl, Tina. She was there. That was one of his girlfriends. And but I don't think they took Tina in. I don't remember Tina going in with us, but it was one of the hardest things to see him because he was on this round contraption with his screws in his head, this metal thing, you know, locked so his neck wouldn't move, and it would the whole thing would just turn. And that's when they told him that you're never going to walk again. And I remember Danny just like collapsing, you know, it just, everybody was just devastated. And my only thought was, you're alive. Hey, you're alive. You know, you know, we'll just take it step by step, but you're alive. We'll be okay.
What was his, you know, what kind of emotional state was he in at that time? Was he coherent? Depressed, yeah.
He was coherent. He was always very coherent. There were a couple of times when he would get like really bad fevers that would only, you know, cause him to be incoherent. But other than that, he was always, you know, very alert, but he was very depressed too. It was, it was, it was really difficult. It was difficult. I remember one night he had a fever. We were still at Jefferson, and the doctors were like, well, you know, we don't know what to do because this fever won't go away. I said, bring me ice bags. And Henry was there with me. Henry and I, we would put ice bags under his arms, under his legs, all over. The minute we put that ice on, it would melt. I said, Henry, just let's keep icing him. We iced him down until that fever broke. I know we were there for like 3 hours, just ice bagging him all over his body. We were going to break, and we broke that fever. We broke it. And, you know, I mean, we had many difficult times with, you know, if I go back and look, because you know he had a second accident.
No. I mean, did I know that? Ha- okay, no. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't know. Yeah, he had 2 accidents.
So this was, when was the second accident?
The second accident, it was, I remember the kids, it was July 6th, um, 87. Had to be about right after he started driving. I don't want to give a year because I can't remember right now, but it was after the first accident, like 2, 3 years. Let
Okay,
me see.
wait a minute, Karen. Wait a minute. I'm completely confused.
Yeah.
He was paralyzed from the chest down, but he was still able to drive?
Well, yes, we had a van that was set up for him to drive. He had the big red van. Oh my goodness! It had a lever that he'd put his arm into, and to gas he'd push it forward. To brake he'd pull back because he could still use his arms. He couldn't use his hands. So to gas he pushed forward. To brake he pulled back, and it would put the brakes on. And to turn, it had this contraption that his hand was in. He'd push over to the right or he'd push over to the left. And you know, the wheelchair, you'd have to lock the wheelchair in. And he was so tall that a lot of times he could not see, he had trouble seeing the lights. So in the beginning when he would drive, I'd get in my car and get in front of him in front of the van and lead him. So he didn't go far. He'd go to the office, and I would lead him to the office, get him parked, and then, he had a nurse. We get him, strapped out and get into the office. Then when it was time for him to come home, I'd do the same thing. I'd go back to the office and just guide him home. But this one day, he had come out of the hospital, and we had been, oh my goodness, in and out of Bryn Mawr. And he said, he had been driving for a while. He said, I'll be okay. So I'm like, okay. So he and the nurse get in the car, get in the van. The next thing I get a call, he had run into an electrical pole. By the time I got to the hospital, he had no blood pressure. They said, we have to operate. I'm like, go. I signed the papers. I'm like, go, operate. He had split his liver. And so we were, and the nurse, she wasn't injured, thank goodness, but she was hurt. So but they ended up taking her to another hospital, like it all. He was an osteopathic, and ended up on a respirator for like 10 days. And that's when he decided he was going to listen and follow the Lord. He made a statement in that hospital that he was going to follow God. He said God told him if he would speak his word, he would raise him up out of that chair.
And I remember Teddy really believing that he would walk again. He used to say that all of the time. I'm going to get out of this chair. I'm going to get out of this chair. And we all believed that he would. I mean, I don't know how you felt, but I thought,
he never, from the day of his accident until he died, the one thing he never atrophied. You know how muscles, you don't use them, they just get flabby and loose. And we had a great therapist that came, Claudia. She came twice a week, and she would exercise and get his legs moved, make him do weights, but his legs never atrophied. And we even worked with Dr. Sabi, and Dr. Sabi used to come to the house at Crosby Brown. We were vegans for 2 years, in hopes that would cleanse his system and just renew all of those, whatever the blood that runs through your spine. But we ended up doing that for 2 years. And one day Teddy just he said, Karen, I want a fried pork chop. I don't care. Get pork chops. And that was the end of our vegan days.
Okay, so going back to the first accident, the accident that caused his paralysis. There were a ton of rumors. You were there. The tabloids, the newspapers were all reporting a lot of crazy stuff. One of the things that was reported was that Teddy had a transgender woman in the car with him that night. And that woman was Tanika Watson. And who knows, what happened or what caused the accident really. But a woman named Tanika Watson went on Oprah's network claiming to be the Tanika and, wanted to come forward and finally tell her side of the story. Do you believe that it was Tanika Watson, that she was the person in the car with Teddy that night?
Yes. And I know I've heard the rumors about Turquoise being in the car. Somebody got there and took her out and whatever. I've never questioned Teddy about the accident. It was something that he hated to talk about. He hated to revisit. He had to go to court. He's had a case with Rolls Royce. Then he had to go to court with Taz. Tanika Watson did testify for him at the Rolls Royce hearing. I don't know what was said because that was all confidential. And when Ted came out of court, we just let it be. It took me about 2-3 years to even get him to let me drive him by the accident site. Because my parents' house where we lived, I would have to past the accident site to get to my parents' house, but he was, just upset him so much. We'd always have to find a different route. And one day I said, "Come on, Teddy, we got to face this. We got to just take this road." But we did. And like I say, I do believe it was Tanika. And, I know that my husband had some crazy things in his head. And we've been to counseling, and I do believe, he had an attraction to transvestites. I have to say, that whatever it did. So if she was in the car, I don't know what happened, but I do believe she was there. And my thing was, listen, this is where we are. And I had loved him before the accident, and him not walking was not going to make me stop loving him. So, I had to accept. And it's funny because I remember when Teddy asked me to go out with him, I was on the road with him. This was when I was working for him. And he called me. We were getting ready to go to work. And one of the bodyguards called, said, "The bear." They used to call him the bear. They said, "The bear wants you." So I'm thinking, what? We're getting dressed, we have, 2 hours to get to the show or get on the bus. So I go down to his room, and he said, "I really, really like you. I want you to be my lady." And I said, "Teddy, you got to be crazy." I said, "You need somebody strong." And I said, "I'm not the one." I said, "I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly." And I said, "I'm not the one." And at that moment, well, he was in this big suite, the doorbell rang. And I was like, yes, I'm out. And the doorbell rang, and it was we were in Detroit, and it was his godmother, no, his godfather. He called him his godfather. And it was a very old girlfriend, and her daughter, who you probably know, Joyce, who I call, Joyce is my daughter. She's been calling me mom. Joyce was probably about 11, 12 then. No, she's probably about 13, because when she started calling me mom, she was about 14, 15. But they rang the doorbell, girl. I was out of that room. I was like, "See you, Ted." And, we just, after that, we became good friends on the road. He would always have to have his seat near mine, or if we're flying, my seat would be near his and not with the dancers. And I'm like, "Okay, Henry, what is this? Y'all trying to, playing some game." And no, the bear did that. The bear did that. But yeah, so after the accident, after we got fired, we started dating. And, I had seen Olive, I'd seen backstage. I'd seen, girls lined up, just drop dead gorgeous, makeup, jewelry, you know, clothes. And, I'm in a sweatsuit, a ponytail, or, cut off jeans with curlers. And that's how he knew me, because you get on the bus, and those big curlers you talk about, I get on the bus with my curlers because we're traveling. I'm like, cut off jeans, pair of sneakers, pair of sandals. So, you know, when it came to the accident and accepting all of that, I'd already been through a lot of that mess.
Okay, so Karen, you can't throw out that Teddy was into trans women or transgendered people and me not ask a question about that. You threw that in the conversation, and I really need to know, as Teddy's girlfriend at the time, when you found out that he had a trans in the car. I mean, I know you were used to the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, but that had to be shocking. I mean, what was that moment for you?
It's hard to explain. You don't accept it, but, I know a lot of people say, well, is he gay? Is Teddy gay? And, you know, no, he wasn't gay. And what I realized about Teddy is, he had access to the top of the line of everything, the prettiest women in the world, the drugs, if this, and I think it just got to the point where this wasn't enough, let me try the next highest. This is not enough, let me go here. This is, you know, until it just knocked him down on his feet. And I, it's the truth, and I had to accept it. I've never been around, any groups of, we've never had that company, with us, but it was something that was a part of him. We, I try to deal with that in counseling because I did feel that Teddy had this, something was, there was something in him, and I wanted to find out and see if, it was something we need to visit. But he would just say, "No, I'm not. She's crazy. I don't like transvestites." And we never really got to the truth of it with him. I have to just say, you know, he was
Bec-
never
because, Tanika claims nothing was going on. It was just a ride home.
right.
But, I'm from Delaware. I was born in Delaware. I have family, who were around at that time. And, everyone says, from that generation says, they knew Tanika, you know, she had a reputation. It was very obvious who she was and what she was about. And there was no way you couldn't know. It's almost like RuPaul walking into the room. Everyone knows RuPaul.
Right.
Everyone knows, it's fine. But it was sort of a known thing with her at that time. So there's no way Teddy couldn't have known she was transgender, and then, the question then becomes, was something going on between them? You know what I mean? If he knew he was giving a transgender woman a ride home, what was that really about? Was it just a ride home? Do you think it was just a ride home, Karen?
I, I don't know. And I don't want to say it was more or it was less because I really don't know. Um, I really don't know. And it's not something that we dealt with. I think we tried to just like go on to a new day, a fresh beginning. Let's get rid of all this ugly stuff that was in your life. And, hey, we've all had moments that you don't want to revisit. And if she was known, maybe so, but I was never in the nightlife. I've probably been to 4 clubs in my entire life to go. you know I was not, first, we weren't allowed to go out that much when I was home. Then when I got in college I started dancing, so all my time was spent at the studio. I didn't even know what Teddy, they said, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. I'm like, well, who are they? What do they sing? But yeah, as far as dealing with all of that, we did not address it. And the one time like I say, that I did, we were in counseling, and I thought that was a safe place to bring it up, so that a counselor would help us get through it. But Teddy didn't want to. He just denied it, and like I say, I think it was just something in him, that addictive personality, where this isn't enough. You don't. You got 50 pretty women. Well, that's not. You want to go to the next level. You can have all of this, and I know he was living a fast lifestyle. I know. I think I was the normal part in his life, the normalcy, because a month before his accident, we were sitting in his study at Crosby Brown, and Teddy said, "I'm going to slow my life down." I said, "Teddy, you got to." He was drinking, he had the drugs, the people that were hanging on just for whatever they could get. And Teddy was a very fast driver. He would always speed. He had already had like 3 accidents before the big one, just minor, but enough to know you have to slow down. And I remember one morning he had to go to the airport, and he was late. And this was after we got fired, and I spent the night, and I had my father's car, my father in his little Mercedes. And he's like, "You got to take me to the airport." Well, he drove, and do you know, this man drove he didn't drive in the lanes. what is the lane called on the side of the highway where he drove that from on 76 from Center City all the way down to the airport. And I'm like, I don't know how we didn't get stopped and get a ticket, but he always drove very fast. So when the accident happened, I know it was, I do believe he was speeding, but he said the wheel locked, and he had been having trouble with the Rolls Royce, but he had different trouble with his other cars, and we don't know who was tampering with them. But there were a lot of things happening. So going back to Tanika, she is, I do believe, I believe her. I've never met her. Um, like I say, she did testify in court with the Rolls Royce case. And yes, she was the one. She was in the car. And what was going on, I can't tell you, and I'm not going to throw my husband under the bus that much.
Someone else was in the ambulance, I think you said.
Tanika, she got in the ambulance with him.
Okay.
She did get in. He wanted her to go because he was afraid of, because it took them so long to even move him. They were letting, people take pictures. Come on, get him to the hospital. And, Teddy did fear a little bit for his life because he didn't know what the police or who had set him up. He was real outspoken, and the police were always messing with him. I remember we went to a Stevie Wonder concert one night, and we went in to get something to eat. We're sitting in the restaurant, and he had parked on a street where all the writers, they all park, and they park halfway up on the curb, halfway in the street. Well, the police decide to ticket his car, and we go out to the car, and they're not only ticketing, but they're towing his car. And they said, you didn't pay your tickets. You have unpaid tickets. So then they handcuff him. And meanwhile, we're standing there. I'm like, wait, give me the keys to the car. They're like, no, we're taking him to the round. They took him to the one of the police stations on 13th Street. So I got Dexter Wansell, who happened to be in the restaurant because it was where all the writers and the singers hung out. So I'm like, Dexter, come on, take me, follow. So they didn't tow his car. They took him. So Dexter got his car. We followed the police car around to the police station, and then they allowed Teddy to give me his keys. I said, give me the car keys. I said, give me, because he used to wear all that gold. I said, give me all your jewelry. I already had his little satchel, and I took his fur coat. I didn't want him going into prison with those things, because who knows if he would have come out with them. So they locked him up. So then I went and called his lawyer, and John Hunt at the time. I called John. John, I'm like, John, we need you. It's like, 12 o'clock at night. John calls the court, and or he called the judge, because John said those tickets are paid. And he'd always get tickets. Teddy, they would ticket him anywhere. I think they did it on purpose. They, because he was the one black man with a Rolls Royce in Philadelphia. But anyway, John called the judge. The judge got up out of his bed and came down. By that time, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. They had moved Teddy to the roundhouse, a big, prison cell or whatever it is. And the judge met me there and got Teddy out of jail 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock.
And this was before the accident.
Yeah, this was before the accident.
Obviously, yeah.
Yes.
So did you and Turquoise ever talk about the accident? I mean, I know fingers were pointing at her as well. Did that ever come up? Because you guys were friends, or friendly.
We were friends. Yeah, we never did. And I think Turquoise probably came to our house after the accident. I probably saw Turquoise and Julius maybe twice. Julius once. Julius stayed arm's length away after the accident. And a lot of people, in the beginning, were coming around and giving their condolences. But after a while, you know, everybody died out. Everybody fell off.
So I don't know if you know this, but this is where Teddy and I kind of hit a wall in our father daughter relationship. When he gave me rights to his life story, to produce the film project
Yeah.
that we were working on at that time. This was years ago. Um, when he gave me the life story rights to work on the film project years ago, I hired a writer. I was talking to a bunch of industry heavy hitters. I was very green at the time. I was so young, Karen, but I was trying my best, to figure it out. And so I was talking to people and I had a lot of people who were interested, and people were giving me feedback. People wanted the project. They wanted to be attached, but they had questions. And we were basing the script on the book that he wrote. And he said, base everything on the book. That's the story I want to put forward. That's what I want to tell. So we did that, but then the feedback we got from a lot of people in the industry was, it's a great story, but we're all familiar with some other details. Those who were there at the time are familiar with things at that time. And if Teddy really wants to tell this story, he has to really tell the story, the good, the bad, all of it. He has to be a little bit more forthcoming. And so I went back to Teddy and I said, Dad, because Teddy was like a father to me, as you know. I went back and I said, this is the feedback I'm getting. Great story. Everybody is interested, but they feel it's a little bit sugar-coated. They feel like you're not giving it up fully. And in order for this project to really fly, you've got to tell a little bit more of what happened, with the accident, with a lot of stuff. It's got to be a little meatier than what we're giving them now. And he got so upset, Karen. That was the first time I think Teddy had ever gotten upset with me. Since I was a little girl, till just a few years ago, he was upset. And he said, this is the way I want to tell my story. This is, that was the image he wanted to portray. And while I understood that, and I know you understand it, because nobody's trying to throw Teddy under the bus. You want him to be viewed in a very positive light and, be respected and, all of those things. But when it comes to a film project about your life story, as they did with Ray and others before, you got to tell it. You know what I mean? So we hit that wall, and well, I think you know what happened after that. But
Yes.
I felt bad because it was such a crossroads, because I knew, I felt that he had lived this wild life, which you know about. The trans thing was a little bit a part of that story, whatever his interests were or curiosities were in that. But for whatever reasons, he didn't want to tell it. And it was hard. It was hard to navigate. I was so young, and it was hard to navigate that at that time.
Well, a lot of it goes, what it all goes back to is the night of the accident. That was so impactful in Ted's whole mindset. That accident just almost destroyed him. It almost destroyed him. I mean, you don't know the nights we would lay and I, just cry. He wanted to die. He absolutely wanted to die. And he would beg me, just give me all those sleeping pills. And I'm like, Teddy, that's not my call. No, you've got to live. But he would not, all those things that needed to be told, and I'm sure they are part of his story. They were part of his life. It just always brought that accident back to him, because that he feels, all those things piled up together caused that accident. Had he not been that fast and furious and crazy, he wouldn't be sitting in that wheelchair today. That he would have been, So, it's like it was a continuous nightmare for him. As much as, you want to really believe he overcame it, and he did. I mean, he overcame a lot, but there were still days that he hated being in that wheelchair. I mean, hated it. And
I
it
know
took
it,
a
I know it was hard for him. I know he was, he went through depression for a really long time. What I couldn't figure out though was, if it was from the accident, if it was embarrassment or if it was denial. If he was just embarrassed by the whole thing or if he really was sort of denying what happened or just believing, trying to make himself believe that it didn't happen. I couldn't quite understand why he desperately wanted to cover it up. I felt like he was covering up certain details. It wasn't that he didn't want to talk about it. When he and I would have conversations, when we were trying to build out, the story for the script, and we got to that point of his story, it was almost like he was telling a different story. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
right. He only tell the good side of
yeah.
he wanted to see, and I think maybe it was part embarrassment because, I mean, he was at the top. He was getting ready to, I mean, be, superhuman almost. And all of a sudden, bam, he's knocked out. So I'm sure there was embarrassment. I remember, the kids coming to me, our dad's not gay, is he? I'm like, no, your dad's not gay. The kids had to deal with a lot of things, their friends' questions. And, it was so much, so much, so much. So it maybe was part embarrassment, part denial. And it was something that he really did not want to talk about. It was something he kept. And I know for us, even when, we would talk about certain things, he would not uh, really open up or like a good example, and I'm saying this recorded, I don't know,
Okay.
but Teddy, after the accident, we would talk about sexual things because we had to adjust our life sexually. And we did talk about, what he liked, and he liked women with women. And so I thought, well, would I, because, this is your husband, you're thinking, and I thought about it, then I never did. But, I know that Teddy had these big, big fantasies that he lived within his head. And how do you say, we talked about him, but I know that a lot of things that he used to do when I got with him, I told him, no, that's over. That part of your life is done. We have 3 kids. We're gonna raise these kids. We're gonna, and he used to always say, when we were on the road, when I was working, he said, we're gonna get a house. We're gonna have a picket fence, and we're gonna have flowers outside. He would have this great fantasy of this life we were gonna have, and I'm thinking, just making this stuff up, trying to get me to like you. Please get away. But so he was such an enigma. There were so many parts to him. Then you look at, a lot of people don't know the other part of Teddy. He went and studied after he had the accident. He studied, got his GED. He went and spoke in front of Congress, fought for civil rights for people with disabilities. So there was another part of him. Then he was trying to study for his minister. There was, he was a good dad. He loved his kids. He was a great son. His mother is going to be 103 years old in June. There's so much to him, and everybody was so focused on the crazy things he did. Well, yeah, that was part of him. But, there was a whole nother side. He loved to cook. He taught me how to make oxtails. He he'd make these little frying pan specials that he would, and if he couldn't do it, he'd sit there at the stove and direct you how to do it, how he wanted it done. And, so I'm saying there are so many more other important things about him than just the crazy things. They were a part of our life, yes. And we try to deal with them. But I would say we were a functional, what was it? I can't even remember. Wait a minute. We were, it'll come to me, my age, but, I had, you know, two, three kids from, two different mothers that were like my best friends. These kids to this day, little Teddy takes care of my insurance, my more whatever. Tish and Donna, I talk to them all the time. Joyce, Joyce has two sons and a grandson. I'm a great grandmother of a 4-year old. So there a lot of normal great things that we had, and most people want to look at the crazy things that made him, but there's so much to that man that people don't know. And I think if you really want to get to know Teddy, know them all. And I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful and that's true. It's very true. But people always want to focus on the crazy. That's the
And yeah,
interesting.
the headlines that gets the story across. And I do believe that, he did sugarcoat a lot of it because probably was embarrassing. I mean, who wants to get caught if that's not your real lifestyle?
Yeah.
Some people stand up to being that. And
Well, he and I hit that wall, and then we were fine after that. We just had a moment where we just sort of butt heads on that part for a little bit. But I remember he wanted to get back in the studio, and he wasn't sure if he could. He wasn't sure if he could sing again. He wasn't sure. I think there was some nervousness there too. But I remember when we were working on the film project, he said, "I'm going to record. I have an idea for a theme song, and I'm gonna record this song." And he started. I have emails about it where he was, typing me. We were emailing back and forth all the time, and he came up with "I Am Who I Am." I remember when he first started working on that, and he said, "Lori, I'm gonna bring in a huge choir, and it's gonna be awesome." And he was so excited, and it was so fun to see him like that again. It was so fun to see that much joy, back in his spirit.
But he had already been back in the studio though, before that song.
Right,
If that,
before then,
that,
but
but yeah, he was ready. Yeah, he was really ready at that when he did that song. Yeah, he was ready to go on the road. He was ready to kind of relight his career, and that he did tour for a while. It took a toll on his body. It was just a lot traveling with the wheelchair and the nurses and all whatever he needed.
yeah. But I remember when he wrote that song and just how excited he was, and
Yes,
that was fun to witness. Um, yeah. So, um, I'm grateful I got to see him before he passed.
yes,
Um, I'm grateful we had, that moment to just, he was always like my father passed away, so he was always like a father to me. And even though we had that bumpy moment, with the life story, he was
yes.
still a dad. And
Girl, he has had bumpy moments with all kids. So just, Teddy, Tish, LaDonna, Joyce. I know friends, a couple of his ex-girlfriends that were girlfriends before me. He has had bumpy roads. We're best friends to this day. It's after the accident. I had a lot of his friends calling, wanted, but I did not. Uh, that was not something that I was interested in. My true friends were friends before, he passed. After he passed, I had a lot of people calling me, wanted to be, oh, Chubby Chubby. I'm like, no, thank you. But yeah, he always loved you. He always, looked at you as his daughter. And I mean, I remember first meeting you in this. He introduced me. This is another one of my daughters, Karen. I'm like, well, hello, daughter, and that was it. And we became mother and daughter. And thank God we're still in touch. I'm blessed to have you in my life. I've really had a, blessed life. And then I've had people ask me, well, would you change? And I'm like, no, it was meant to be. And my main reason, I really knew that I really believed that he would walk again. And I saw miracles when he was almost gone, in the hospital, talking out of his head because they over medicated him. And, he's telling me he had breakfast with Bugs Bunny. And I'm like, okay, stop the medicine. No more. And the doctors are like, oh, we're doing life saving techniques. I'm like, no, you're not. You're making him crazy. So he's not taking any more medicine. And I remember I was on the phone with Danny. I'm like, Danny, they're trying to kill my husband. I said, and he's sitting here, Teddy's like, yes, everything's fine. Danny said, He said, that's not Ted. Ted never agrees to everything like that. I'm like, I know, Danny. I said, so the doctors, I called our regular doctor and I got him to that hospital. I said, reevaluate what you're doing because you're not going to make him crazy. You're not going to make him crazy. And they took him off all that medicine. And I remember I called his god sister, Jenny, and her sister came over one night. We pulled shut the blinds, pulled the shades down in the room. They prayed and they bought their olive oil. They sang, prayed. I mean, we walked that floor. I didn't let a nurse in that night. I said, do not disturb. That next morning, Teddy woke up like a new man from being just out of his head to like, boom. And at that point, he had grown a ponytail because he had been in the hospital so long. I said, I'm cutting his ponytail off. He said, cut it. I cut it off. When we went home, then he wanted to go bald. So for a while we were bald. I used to have to shave his head every morning. But yeah, we had there were a lot of good times. And, even there were a lot of tough times. Him trying to date somebody close that I knew, or not date, but flirt. So, we not kids.
Well, you guys were young. You were what, in your 20s? And
I moved in with Ted. I was 28. I was like 27, 28. And I was I think I probably had 2 boyfriends before that. And nobody really steady like Ted. Ted and I started dating when I was like 24 and 24, 25. Because I think I met him when I was 24. And right after that, we dated. And once I started dating Teddy, I really didn't date anybody else. That was it. Even though, like I said, he was having fun, but it was a reason. Do you know I have to tell you this story.
Okay.
This was after the accident. And he's laying in the bed and I could come home from dancing school and, dancers have dance bags and they just have everything in it. You got deodorant, you got whatever you need, soap, washcloths, towels, witch hazel. And I always kept a Bible a little red Bible. I always just kept it with me. My grandmother had given it to me when I was in the 5th grade. And I'm dumping my dance bag out on the bed. And he said, what are you doing with my Bible? I'm like, what do you mean? I said, this is my Bible. And I opened it up. I'm like, look, my name is in it. It said, Karen Still, 4585 Merrick Road. He said, He said, that's my Bible. And he said, get my mom. So I went and got mom. She just happened to be, she didn't live with us, but she was there at the house. So he said, Mom, isn't that my Bible? She said, I'll be right back. She drove around to her house. She came back. He had the same exact Bible from when he was a kid.
Wow.
We had the same exact Bibles. His had writing in Arabic, like 5 different languages that he studied when he was young. And he had written stuff in his. And we just, we were both stunned. We're like, okay, you know, now this is a moment. And he wanted that Bible. He told me that Bible was for Elena, but unfortunately, a person has it that took all his stuff, and my baby girl won't get her Bible.
Yes, we aren't going to go there right now, but that might be a part two, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Um,
But we ended up with the same Bible. So, I knew that there was something that always connected, clicked with us, that was just innate. And everybody said, oh, I had people say, oh, you wouldn't have looked at him if he wasn't a singer. Teddy was cute to me. I thought Teddy was fine. And, to this day, I still think he was gorgeous. And there are a couple pictures that we took that we even kind of looked alike. I'm like, we had the same smile, we had the same noses, same big foreheads.
well, I thought you two were adorable. And I mean, the way you two looked at one another, when I knew you,
Right.
because you guys remained friends until the very end. I mean, you were
Yes.
always, but I always felt that, he never stopped loving you. He was still,
When there was a little contention when we were first divorcing, but Teddy wanted to separate. I said, no, I'm not going to play house. I said, either we work on our marriage or I'll divorce you. And then my brother-in-law, who's very smart, my younger sister's husband, said something to me that really made me stand up. He said, you're in the most selfish relationship I've ever seen. And I thought, wow. So I said, well, maybe, I said, I'm still sane, still, got my sanity. I'll just do, I'd rather be at peace than anything. So I said, I divorced Ted. Ted didn't divorce me. I divorced him. And there was, like I say, there was, in the beginning, it was a little contentious. Then after everything, we became friends again. When he got married the second time, she kind of turned him against all of his old friends. Anybody, everybody, something happened and nobody really understands it. But even the kids, he was sending letters to his daughter that were senseless. Like, where did all this come from? But we know where it came from.
well, yeah, we're not going to.
Go there. That's another, yeah. The good thing about it is we have stayed a family, functional but dysfunctional. That's what I call this. I said, we are functional. I said, we were the dysfunctional, functional family because, we had all these three different kids and nobody could believe that, they always questioned Tish and Donna because they were born so close. Then it's funny because from December 30th to January 6th, my kids are the same age.
I
Uh,
know.
so we would celebrate their birthday some in that period. I said, okay, I'm having one birthday party. You all pick the day between the 20th and whenever we did have birthday, it would be between that day because they're all the same age. I'm like, how unique is that? I thought it was great.
It's fun, but it's a little, three kids born in the same year. That's definitely, a conversation. But no, it's super fun, and they're awesome human beings.
They
Teddy
are.
Teddy Jr. is one of my favorite people. Teddy,
Oh,
little Teddy.
his his kids are. He's done such a good job,
Yeah,
and they've got mom Ida. Uh, Teddy Senior's mother lives with them now, so they
which is incredible because she's what is she, 103 now? How old is Ida?
she'll be 103 in June.
Wow. And still alert, just sharp as a tack.
Sharp. She, I think there are sometimes she has her moments where she claims to forget, but I think you know, she does it on purpose.
Well, I cannot tell you how blessed I've been all of these years to have had you and Teddy and, the whole family in my life. I lost my father.
Right.
Um, and you've been like a second mom to me all these years, and I love you so much. And you've
I,
had, hmm?
I said, I love you.
And you've had that beautiful smile and the beautiful face, I mean, you're still, it's so funny. I look at pictures and video. Remember when you did behind the scenes way back? I've,
Yeah.
I wasn't even around, but I've seen the videos. And your face and your smile, you radiate, and you still do. You still do. And despite it all, I know that things have been a little bit foul and whatever. The family has still remained the family.
There's something good that will come out of this. I believe that there's, everybody keeps saying, you need to write a book, you need to do this. And I'm like, maybe, but it's got to have some meaning to me. I just don't want to write a book because I was Teddy Pendergrass's wife. Not that's not legit to me. I was his wife because I wanted to keep that man alive because I loved him. And a lot of women do that.
Well,
But
and at one point you guys had talked about getting back together, right?
yeah, yeah, we did. We were almost there, and
Stuff happened.
stuff
Um,
happened,
we won't go
and
there.
I say, go, be happy, live your life.
Yes, but we all had a chance to see him before he passed,
Yeah, I
and
saw him that day in the hospital,
yeah.
and he said, "I want to go home, Karen. I just want to go. I want to be in my own house." I said, "You're gonna get there." And I had his god sister. I took her, then another friend. She was with us, and oh,
I
crazy
know,
day.
I know. With all of that said, Miss Karen Pendergrass, you have led such a full life. You've led such a full life in many ways. Um, and you're still teaching Zoom classes, your dance classes, and you're still doing so much. But is there anything left on your bucket list? Anything that you still want to do? You're talking about, people have asked you to do a book and these things, and you're not sure of the substance. What else is there that you want to do? What else is left for Karen Pendergrass to do?
Oh, I don't even know, girl. I've never had a bucket list. I think I take it day by day, and you know, I I love I love the Lord. I have to say, and I have to give honor to God because I know I wasn't raised in the church, but when I started going to church with Teddy's mother, and that's how I got involved in church. And there are still some things that I would like to do. I have a praise dance group, and I can't wait till this COVID is controlled so that we can get back because that's where I want to put all my energies in is for those girls because I have about 35 young women from the age of 3 to they go to about 18, and the ones that graduate come back and help me. They come back, they go to college, and now they come back and they're my assistants helping the next group get up. So I really don't have a bucket list, but I'll think about that. And next on part 2, I'll have my bucket list. I'd like to win $1 million.
Well, yeah, we could all do that. That would be great.
Yeah, with everybody. I'll
All
put
right,
that on the list.
there you go. That's a good thing to put on the list. Okay, so in closing, since you talk about the children and the young people, do you have any advice you would give to young people at this point with all you've been through, especially young people pursuing the arts? But just in general, what advice would you give to young people nowadays?
One, I would say listen, you know, and if you're in the arts, to the parents, make sure they're in a good school because the foundation is lifelong. The discipline you get from the arts, I don't care, because I've seen arts change lives from little kids with autism, ADHD, any disorder, and just normal kids, even me, there's so much that the arts can do for you. It's arts is education. Art and children need it. They need it. So I would just say listen and follow, and just get all you can and do your best. Really get it and grab it. Don't take it for granted. You don't take anything, really now, don't take anything for granted. Get in there and try to do your best and, live your dream. Follow your dream, not somebody else's. Follow your dream.
We'll end it with one last question that I've really wanted to know, and I've never asked you. Of Teddy's entire catalog, do you have a favorite song?
I do. And it's one he dedicated to me. And it's on the album. It's called Love is the Power. And I mean, I love all of his music, but that one just resonates with me because it was love was the power that we had. In spite of everything he and I went through, 15 years that we were married. Love, it was love. It was love. And he dedicated that to me. So I'm like, there you go.
And that is a great way to end this podcast. We may even have to do a part two because I know there's still more that we could talk. We could go for
Oh,
hours.
okay. Yes, I'm good.
But thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Mwah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this with us today. And yes, I will talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Love you.
Love
Mwah.
you too.
Mwah.
Mwah.